you have your Bibles, you can go ahead and be turning to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. We were last visiting together in the book of Daniel, this book of mystery and the miraculous. We saw where the king had had a dream. When he had that dream, he called the wise men, all the wise men of Babylon together to help him to know what the dream was and the interpretation of it. And the unusual thing about it is when he called them, a king would ordinarily tell them the dream and they'd give the interpretation. But Nebuchadnezzar says, I'm not going to tell you what the dream is. You're to tell me what the dream is and then tell me the interpretation. Because if you're really wise men and you really know what you're saying and you really can tell the future, you ought to be able to tell me the dream as well as the interpretation. And man, they were up in arms. They said, nobody's ever done that. That's impossible. No one can do that. Only someone who would be a god could do that. There's no way to do that. Well, they failed to understand there was a man. His name was Daniel. And whenever Daniel found out that they were going to kill all the wise men, and he was included in that, he asked the king to give him time to find out the interpretation, the dream and the interpretation. The king gave him time. He asked his friends, his three friends, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to pray for him. And during the night, God gave to him the dream and the interpretation. Then he comes to the king and tells him, I'm here to give that interpretation and the dream to you. But he says, before I do, I want you to understand that it's not me who does it, but I serve a God, the God of heaven, who knows all things and who reveals all things. And through this dream and through the interpretation, he's going to be telling you, King Nebuchadnezzar, about future end-time events. Now, one of the more peculiar things about that is, why did God choose this old heathen king to be one that he would reveal these things and these visions, these things about the future? I don't know. I think one of the reasons is because he wants Nebuchadnezzar, as eventually through the progress of Nebuchadnezzar's life, I think he wants Nebuchadnezzar to acknowledge that he's really God. And I think eventually Nebuchadnezzar actually comes into a relationship with that God. He has to go through some hard experiences to get there. If you read through the book of Daniel, you know that. But he finally comes to a place of acknowledging that Jehovah God, Yahweh, was truly the only true God, the real God. But through this pagan king, God gives this dream and gives this vision about future events. Well, today we want to look at that dream and the interpretation. It begins in Daniel 2, verse 31. Daniel, speaking to Nebuchadnezzar, says, You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Okay, that's the dream. Stop there for just a minute. The first thing that happens is Daniel says, Nebuchadnezzar, you saw this great statue. It was of great size. Not only was it of great size, it was of great splendor. It was made of multi-metals, one being gold, the head, and then the chest, or the breast, and the arms being of silver, and bronze being the belly and the thighs, and then iron being the legs, and then finally the feet and the toes being a combination of iron and clay. But it was such a large and it's such a splendid thing. It said that when you saw it as something that was awesome. Not only was it something that was awesome, it was something that through this whole of the dream troubled you, gave you some anxiety within your heart and within your life. Now, one of the things I think that happens before he ever has to interpret, I think Nebuchadnezzar already understands, and God is revealing that God is so much bigger than Nebuchadnezzar. Imagine this. Here's Nebuchadnezzar, who's this side, and here's this huge statue of which he's going to be a part of. He's symbolized by the gold head, but he's just a part of that. But this whole of history, this whole of these kingdoms and what's going to happen, this whole plan of man and the end times, all of that is the plan of God. And whenever you look at the plan of God in relationship to who you are, even if you're that great King Nebuchadnezzar, you're mighty small in relationship to God. You get it? Now, I don't think God just wants us to understand that from Nebuchadnezzar's view. I think God wants us to understand that. That in regard to God and how big He is and His plan and all that He's doing and all that He has, all of us are very small, no matter what part we play. Nebuchadnezzar saw this huge statue made of all these different metals and all of those things that are happening, but that wasn't all that happened, though. He said he also saw a stone. And that stone was cut out of a mountain, not by hand. And not only did that stone come out of the mountain, not cut by man's hand, but it comes and it goes across the plains and it hits the statue in the feet and it crushes the feet. But not only crushes the feet, it crushes every part of that statue, from the gold to the silver to the bronze to the iron. That stone crushes it to the point that it all is like chaff. Chaff was when the wheat was there, and they would take and they would throw it up in the air, and the wind would blow it away, and it would not be there. It says that's the way all of those elements, all of those parts that made up that statue, they were like chaff. They were blown in the wind, never to be known again, never to be seen again, never to have a part to play in it again. All of that done by that stone. And that's not the end. That stone which crushed that statue also finally grows into being a huge mountain in itself and filling up the space where the statue once was. That's the dream. Now, how would you like to interpret that? How would you like to see the meaning of that? Well, only God could give the interpretation, and God gave the interpretation to Daniel, and he follows up the picture of the dream, the story of the dream, with that interpretation. What is it? This is what he says, verse 36. This was a dream, and now we shall tell its interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, He has given them into your hand and has caused you to rule over them. You, O King Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. You are the head of gold. Verse 39. And after you there will arise another kingdom inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things, so that like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. And in that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it will be a divided kingdom. It will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly of pottery, or so some of the kingdom will be strong, and part of it will be brittle. In that you saw the iron mixed with the common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future, so that the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Now, you know that all of this is true. You know that all of it is exactly like he dreamed it. Because look what happens next, verse 46. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel and gave orders to present to him an offering and fragrant incense. The king answered Daniel and said, "Surely your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men. And Daniel made request of the king and appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was at the king's court. You know it is true. It's exactly what he dreamed. It's exactly what he'd seen. And now he is going to give him not interpretation. What does it mean by this statue? A statue there that is made up of 4 different metals: gold, silver, bronze, and iron, and finally the feet and the toes made up of iron and clay. He helps us to know what that's going to be. Each one of those metals and each part of that statue represents a kingdom. And he's defining what is called the time of the Gentiles. It is the time of the Gentiles. Jesus spoke about that in Luke 24:21. In Luke 24:21, he talks about the time of the Gentiles, when the Gentiles shall rule over that precious piece of land, that precious promised land that is so significant and important to God. The first time of the Gentiles began when the Babylonians took charge. When Nebuchadnezzar comes in and he takes over and he destroys the temple, he's going to destroy the wall, and he's going to deport all of those best of the young men over into Babylon, and the control in that land, the control over Jerusalem and over the Holy Land is now under the control of the Babylonians. He and that is the first kingdom that issues in the time of the Gentiles. That happened in 606 BC. You're going to need to write that down, okay? If you're taking notes, you're going to need this, all right? 606 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the first time he deports Daniel and others, but in 606, he takes over that land of Jerusalem and the land of Judea. He is Nebuchadnezzar. He is an autocratic king. He is in charge. There's nobody but him in charge, and he is an awesome kingdom. It says, matter of fact, that God has given him the right at that time to be the king over all kings, to be the ruler without question. Not only be over man, but be over beasts, be over all things. He has been given that position, and it's been given to him by God. Now, it was already foretold by Jeremiah that that was going to happen, remember? That I'm going to use Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, in order to carry out my work, and part of that is to discipline the children of Israel because they have fell to be obedient to the commands of God. And so the first part of that statue is the head of gold, and it's very plain that he says, hey, you are that head of gold. You are the first of the kingdoms in the time of the Gentiles, and you have the most value. Gold was far more valuable than silver or bronze or iron. You are of the most value. You are the heaviest or the weightiest of one. You are the head of gold. But, he says, there will be another kingdom that will come after you. And that kingdom is represented by silver. It's across the breast and the arms. An interesting thing about that kingdom is it's going to have 2 parts. 2 parts, just as you have 2 arms. We know who that was. It ends up being the Medo-Persian kingdom. The Medo-Persian kingdom. In case you're questioning whether that would be true or not, we know Nebuchadnezzar is the first kingdom. It says it. Whenever it identifies in one verse the second and third kingdoms that are going to be there, the silver and bronze, in case you wonder that, just go back and read, go over and read in Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 8. There are 2 more visions that Daniel has. And Daniel chapter 7, we'll get there. It's going to be the vision of the beasts coming out of the Mediterranean Sea. And as those beasts come out, each one of those beasts will coincide with each one of these kingdoms. Nebuchadnezzar has the dream of the statue, and it is Daniel who interprets it. In chapter 7, Daniel has the vision of the beast, and it's going to be an angel who has to interpret it. Then in Daniel chapter 8, there's another vision, and that vision regards the ram and the goat. And the ram and the goat, and he has to have it interpreted as well. And in chapter 8, it identifies the second and the third kingdoms as being first the Medo-Persians, and the third one was going to be the Greeks, or Greece, or the Greco-Macedonian kingdom. So there's no doubt about it, as you have the progressive revelation in Daniel, that the second of those kingdoms is going to be the Medo-Persians. The Medes and the Persians. First the Medes, then the Persians. And the Persians are the mightier one, and it ends up being that people mostly identify it as the Persian kingdom, but it started in two parts with the Medes and the Persians. Well, the Medes and the Persians take over the Babylonian Empire. That happens through Cyrus in 539 BC. In 539 BC, the Medo-Persians take over that land of the Babylonians and take all the land and all the empire that the Babylonians have had. Therefore, it means that now Judah and Jerusalem are in and under the control of who? The Medo-Persians. That's right. And that's whenever Cyrus is the king, and he issues that decree. Remember the decree? Go back to your homeland. Go back to your homeland and rebuild the temple. Go back to your homeland and inhabit your homeland. Now, he wasn't giving them freedom. He just knew that the best way to deal with those people is let them go back home, let them have their own religions, and he sends them back home, but they are still under control by the Medo-Persians. That being the ones of the breastplate with silver and the two arms of silver. Following that then, you have the belly and the thighs that are made of bronze. That is the third kingdom. In Daniel chapter 8, it's going to identify the third kingdom. The third kingdom is the Greco-Macedonian kingdom. Once again, it has two parts, two thighs. It doesn't have one. The only one who ever had one was Nebuchadnezzar. Then it comes down to the point of having two with the Medo-Persians and two parts with the Greco-Macedonian. And they, just like the Medes and Persians, were of less value and had digressed and less weighty than Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians. So when you come to bronze, bronze is nothing in comparison to silver. You see a progressive digression. A progressive digression. As every kingdom takes charge, it gets weaker and weaker. It never can seem to get stronger. It never can seem to turn things around. And there's a purpose and a reason in that. All right? Then the final of the fourth of those kingdoms, it says the legs of iron. The legs of iron. Well, let me go back to the Greeks. The Greeks take over when Alexander the Great. Have you ever studied about Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great conquers his world in a short time. He actually conquers the Medo-Persian Empire. Think about this, in 4 years. From 334 BC to 330 BC, he conquers the entire Persian Empire. That's almost unheard of if you were living in our day. And he didn't have jet airplanes and nuclear weapons like we have. He had horses and he had men. But in 4 years, he took over the Medo-Persian Empire. 334 to 330 BC. He only lasted a short while, and whenever he dies, 4 of his generals are going to actually take and divide up that kingdom. You know what? In that vision, go read it in Daniel chapter 7, when it talks about the 4 beasts. The fourth of those beasts, or the third of those beasts who's come up, and that's going to be the Greco-Macedonian. It says, and it comes up with one horn, and that horn breaks off, and there are going to be 4 horns. Wonder how he knew that. Because it's going to be divided among 4 kingdoms. That Greco-Roman is going to be divided. Greco-Macedonian is going to be divided with 4 kings in regard to that. How do we know that? Because God knows everything. Have y'all got that figured out yet? If there's one thing you ought to get from this, God knows everything. He's telling what is going to happen. After 330, the Greeks are in charge. And they're in charge for a while. But the fourth of those kingdoms is the kingdom of iron, the legs that are of iron. Who is that? Everybody knows that kingdom. That's the Roman kingdom. It's the only one in the book of Daniel that is not specifically named. But there's no doubt the description is that it is the Roman kingdom. Because you know how Rome described itself? That Rome had a hill of iron. And the heel of iron, or the foot of iron went, and their whole method was to crush all the other people, to crush all the other kingdoms, and to put them in submission. And how did God describe them? Now remember, God's describing this over here in 606 BC. In 606, actually 603 BC, he's telling each one of these kingdoms. Do you know when Rome came into power? In 63 BC. In 63 BC, Pompey took over Jerusalem. And remember, it doesn't matter what else is happening in Rome. All that matters is who's in charge of Jerusalem and Judea. That's all that matters to God. Everything that happens regardless. And in 63 BC, the Romans took over and took charge. And they began to rule and reign. Now, here's an interesting thing about Rome. Just go back and read Roman history. No one ever defeats the Romans. The Romans are never overthrown. They just dissipate. They rule for about 4 or 5 centuries, and they just get weaker and weaker and weaker, and nations will break off and form another nation. This country will form that one. And there's no one who ever comes in and defeats the Romans and says, we're in charge and we're ruling the world. They're the last of those kingdoms. And the Roman king, listen, the Roman kingdom, as far as Bible is concerned, is still out there. It's just underneath everything else that's happening. There's still this Roman Empire that's out there happening. And then that brings you to an event of that 4th kingdom. That's when it talks about it's going to have the feet. And the feet are going to be made with iron and clay. Iron and clay. And whenever that iron and clay are mixed together, you see the feet, and they have 10 toes. And those 10 toes are going to represent 10 kingdoms, 10 nations. And those nations are finally and ultimately going to come together in 10 nations. And in that 10 nations is going to be the revival of the Roman Empire. You know when that happens? All these other things have already happened. But that does not happen until the end of time. Until it gets to the point when the second coming of Christ is going to take place. It's a description of actually what's going to happen after the tribulation begins. And when the tribulation begins and all of these take place until Jesus comes again the second time. His return. Not the rapture of the church, but the second coming. Because remember, the second coming is a Jewish event. It's what's going to happen regarding the world and regarding His nation of the Jews. But before that takes place, those feet, those 10 toes, those nations are going to rise up and going to take charge basically of the world. And then out of those 10, you'll see it as we go through Daniel, out of those 10, out of 3 nations, one is going to rise up who's going to be in power. Who's that supposed to be? What's his name? Called the Antichrist. You ever heard of the Antichrist? He's going to be the Antichrist. And out of that, then it pictures step by step the process of how the end of life and the end of the world, the consummation of time happens. Daniel doesn't give you all that right here. He doesn't give it to Nebuchadnezzar right here, but he does talk about it. Remember what he says? Here's what he says. And whenever there was the 10 toes, or the feet with the toes on it that are made with clay and iron, then, what? Then you saw a stone that was cut out of the mountain. A stone that was cut out, not made by man's hands. Now, who's the stone? Who's the stone? He is the chief cornerstone, right? He's the stone of stumbling and also the rock of offense. That's Jesus. Jesus is pictured as a stone. And how is He formed? Not by the hands of man. Did Jesus come here by the natural means whereby you and I got here? No. How was He brought in this world? Miraculously. It was the hand of God. He's the Son of God. Mary conceived, Virgin Mary, by the Holy Spirit. It's the work of God that brings the Son of God into this world. And He came and He was born. And whenever He was born, that is the last time. That is the end of days. It is the latter days that takes place at that time. But is that all that's going to happen? He came here, He died on the cross, He rose again, He ascended to the Father. Is that all we're going to hear about Jesus? No way. There's something else that's going to happen. You know what's going to happen? Jesus is coming again. And when Jesus comes again, He's coming twice. One, He's coming for the rapture of the church. Now, if you're not saved, you ought to get saved today. For any other reason than you don't want to go through the tribulation, all right? Promise me you don't want to go through the tribulation. If you have never given your heart to Christ, you want to get saved now because you want to be raptured and get out of this thing of the tribulation. The other thing is, if you've heard the gospel and you don't accept Jesus Christ, whenever it comes a time of tribulation, you're never going to want Jesus. You're going to have a deluded mind. You had the opportunity. You missed that opportunity. Now is the day of salvation, and you need to respond to the message that you hear. Now is that day. But after the rapture of the church, there's going to be 7 years of tribulation. You studied about that? 7 years of tribulation that are going to finally end in the battle of Armageddon, but are going to finally and ultimately end when Jesus comes back. He's coming, He's returning. It is the second coming of Christ. And that's the picture of the stone that comes. The one who came here, and He was not made by the hands of man. He is coming, but this time He is not coming as a suffering servant. He is coming as King of kings and Lord of lords. And He is coming to establish the Messianic kingdom. He is coming to establish God's kingdom. And whenever that stone comes in, it says He's going to wipe out all other kingdoms. There's not going to be one iota that any of the kingdoms are going to matter. All that's going to matter is God's kingdom. That's all that's going to matter at that time. Do you understand? And it's not going to be a matter that He comes like all other kingdoms, just conquers the people. Do you realize how that takes place? If Nebuchadnezzar, whenever the Medo-Persians defeated Nebuchadnezzar, now they became Medo-Persians. When the Medo-Persians defeated, now they became the Greco-Macedonians. When they were defeated Roman, that's not the way it's going to happen. You don't become a part of God's kingdom because you're a part of the group and you just get absorbed. You're going to be a part of God's kingdom because you chose to be a part of God's kingdom. It's not going to be an extension of all the other empires. It is a choice that is going to be made. And when Jesus comes, all the other kingdoms are not going to matter. All that matters is whether or not you're in the kingdom of God. And that stone, which wipes out all the statue and is no more, that stone finally grows to be a mountain. And in the Bible, the picture of the mountain is a picture of the kingdom. And it's the establishment of this kingdom. And what does it say about that kingdom? It's a kingdom that no one will ever defeat. It's a kingdom that will last forever. It's the Messianic, God's kingdom that will be there forever and forever. Now listen to me, very important. Every one of the details that have happened with this dream have taken place, and the interpretation have taken place just like he said. Just exactly like he said. Nebuchadnezzar was defeated by the Medo-Persians. Before the Medo-Persians ever had power. Whenever he tells them that the Greco-Macedonians are going to defeat them, they were a bunch of little tribes that were fighting among themselves. When he talks about Rome is going to be the ones who defeats the Greeks, everybody would laugh at that because the Romans were hardly even in existence at that time and had no power. Some people who want to interpret this, they cannot believe the power of God to tell what's going to happen. They'll say Daniel must have written this back in the 1st century BC because it had to have already happened. No, it didn't already happen. It's just the one who's going to cause it to happen is telling you what He's doing before He does it. That's the great thing about God, amen? I like God to let me know what's happening before it's going to happen, so that I can be ready for what is going to happen. Do you understand that truth? And that is the God that we serve. And He lets each and every person be able to know that because He wants them to know that in regard to history, in regard to kingdoms, He's the one who establishes them, He's the one who takes them down, and He's the one who fulfills His purpose in the midst of them. Now, here's a thing that you need to realize and we all need to realize. What's this all about? Here's the picture. The picture is this, that there's no kingdom in this world, no Gentile kingdom in this world that will ever make man better. It will never make man better. Every one of them tried and every one of them digressed. Do you realize that? Nebuchadnezzar, gold, it digressed in the Medo-Persians. It digressed in Greece. It digressed in Rome. When people think about Rome and how powerful Rome was just a mixed bag of things. Rome tried so many things. It was tremendous organizationally, but it was bankrupt morally. They tried to be imperialistic, but democratic. You know how Caesar worked that out, right? There's all kinds of problems. They tried to put all these cultures and races together. They never would mix. They never would work together. Here's the reality. You had an autocratic king. You had an oligarchy whenever it came to the Macedonians. You came all the way down to imperialistic when it came to the Romans. And then finally and ultimately, you know what the highest rank, you know what the best system of government we think there is? Here's the best system of the government. You take that and you put the seed of man involved in it, seed of men involved in it. You put the clay involved in it. You know what the greatest form of government is? Democracy. But you know what? Democracy, just like the autocratic and just like imperialistic, the democratic system is still not going to make man better. Still doesn't make man better. Oh, Brother Mack, are you against democracy? No. The point of it is democracy is not going to make us better. Whenever you get with democracy, what do we all have our rights, we all have our needs, we all have this, we all have that. It's all about me. But it doesn't make anybody better. Because there's nothing about us, no matter how we try to govern, no matter what kingdom there is, there's nothing that makes us better except God. God's the one who makes us better. And He's the one who's going to make it right. And He does that through Jesus Christ whenever He comes. He does it in your heart, in your life, and in our world, in Jesus Christ right now. And ultimately, He's going to do it in Jesus Christ as He comes the second time, as King of Kings and Lord of Lords to establish His millennial reign. It will be in and through Jesus Christ. It's what God's going to do. Now let me tell you how God rules. God doesn't rule by democracy. He rules by theocracy. You know what that means? Here's the answer. Yes, Lord. Just learn how to say that, all right? Whenever it's a theocracy, He is in charge. And what He says, you don't have a chance to debate, and you're not going to get to vote on it. That's going to shock you. You're not going to get to vote on it. Here's your answer. Yes, Lord. Now, I'm helping you out, whether you know that or not. Some of you look like a calf looks at the new gate. You're not sure what I'm getting. But here's the point. Listen to me. You need to practice. You need to get in practice. And here's how you get in practice. Whatever God's leading you to do and how you surrender your life to Him and whatever He tells you to do, just go ahead and start practicing. Say, yes, Lord. Let's practice together. Would you say it with me? All right. Yes, Lord. Yeah, that wasn't very good. Let's say it one more time. Yes, Lord. Just get in practice, because whenever He sets up His rulership, that's all you're going to have the chance to say. When He says, it is yes, Lord. It is yes, Lord. The kingdoms of this world are never going to make men better. It's never going to make the world better. It's because we're sinners. We're sinners who need and must be redeemed. We're in a sinful world that must be reclaimed and must be re-won. And what we are waiting for is for that stone to show up. And we're waiting for Him to come and to take down all the things of this world and all the kingdoms of this world and to establish the kingdom of God and the kingdom of righteousness and the kingdom where He won it through His precious blood. That's the kingdom we're looking for. Well, what happens? Nebuchadnezzar, whenever he hears that interpretation, this is what he says. First of all, in verse 6, he says he bows down. That's what he would do typically to a pagan god. But he bows down before Daniel. Not that he's really bowed for Daniel, but Daniel's the voice of this God. He bows down and gives homage to the God of Daniel. He offers to Him all kinds of gifts. Nebuchadnezzar realizes that that is the dream, and he realizes what the interpretation is all about, and it's all from God. And he makes a statement, Daniel, surely your God is a God of gods. He is a Lord of kings, and He's a revealer of the mysteries. I did not know what it meant, but now He has revealed this mystery to me through you. Your God is the God of gods. If God did nothing else but do that one thing where that Nebuchadnezzar would recognize that He's the God of gods, it would be worth it all. But there's far greater meaning to that, not only for Nebuchadnezzar in his day. Nebuchadnezzar is going to die, and he's not ever going to see that come to pass. You know it? He's not going to ever see all these kingdoms. But you and I, where we live, we have a chance to look back, and we have a chance to see that each and every one of those kingdoms existed just as God said it would in the book of Daniel. They ended just as God said it would, and now we can be assured and certain that in the future, it's going to come back just like He said, It's not only in Daniel, it's in the book of Revelation when it defines those 10 nations and how they come into power and all the things about the Antichrist. When he further reveals those things, we can be assured that it's going to happen and that Jesus is coming again. He's going to establish His kingdom. But the question is, where are you? Where are you? Who are you? And whose kingdom are you standing? I hope you're not depending upon your life, your country, or anything about us to get you to glory and get you to heaven. What matters is you're a part of a heavenly kingdom. I'm a part of a heavenly kingdom. I'm a part of the Messianic kingdom. He's Lord over me. He's Lord over my life. He is ruler. Somebody might not see that and understand that right now, but it is real, and one day all will know that it is real. Where do you stand? Your hope, my hope, is that we are in Jesus Christ, that stone, that one who's coming the second time, that one who is going to establish His kingdom. Where are you? That's really all that matters. Where are you? Be certain this, that the God we serve knows time, establishes time, puts it all in order, and He wrote it down so you'll be able to know the God we serve.